And we're back. You're listening to the Talk Boxing with Billy C show. Hey, don't forget about the website, www.billycboxing.com. Bang yourself around. Bang around that site. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Bang around that site. You'll see some good stuff, including my book. It's up under the book club section. And actually, we're going to have a Buy It Now button up there, hopefully by the end of the weekend, all right? Things have been busy. So, hey, joining me right now, he's a boxing Hall of Famer and the boxing commissioner of New Jersey, my main man, Larry Hazzard. What's up, brother?
Hey, Billy. How you doing, man?
I'm not doing too bad. But great fights last weekend. I don't know about you, but I loved the Carl Frampton fight when he fought Gonzalez. It was an entertaining fight. It was kind of funny at first because, what they were saying, all these fighters in England, they fight each other a lot, but they don't fight the Mexican fighters, And all of a sudden he was in there and it's like, man, this guy, he won't quit. But I liked what I saw in Frampton, Larry. I saw a guy that clearly has boxing ability in terms of, quote, sweet science, unquote. But he was also willing to engage. He's got fast hands, and I like him. I'm hoping to see more. What did you see?
I agree. I thought he was very entertaining, and I thought his opponent was very entertaining. And it was a good fight for TV, good fight for the fans, and this is what we want. Frampton, I think he was a little anxious in the beginning because he made his American debut, and he wanted to look good, and I think he came out a little fast. And once he settled in, you could see the skills begin to surface. And as they say, the men got separated from the boys as the fight went on. But I thought it was a very entertaining fight and a very fan-friendly fight and a great fight for a Saturday evening. It was good, man.
Hey,
it's very good. I was very impressed.
It's like we were talking about with the PBC series last week. It seems to be kicking it up a notch. And that was like the beginning. We got the Malignaggi Garcia fight coming. We got the great fight that is going to be in your state between Cunningham and Tarver, and then of course the Leo Santa Cruz and Abner Maris fight. I mean, so there's some really good fights on the horizon. One of the things I mentioned about Carl Frampton before I move on to a couple of the other fights is I agree. He was a little anxious for those two knockdowns. He obviously wasn't hurt, and the reason I say obviously is because he didn't change his game plan, Larry. Like if a guy was hurt, if the guy was hurt, he would have been tentative. He would have backed off. I don't think he would have been as engaging as he was. But to his credit, he got back up on the horse and controlled that fight. And even though Gonzalez was extremely entertaining, like you said, it was a tough kid. But Frampton, I want to see more of him.
Yeah, and I think the American fight fans want to see more of these types of fights and these types of fighters. And I think we're getting a great caliber of fight with these foreign fighters fighting more here in America, and it's adding another dimension to our sport. And these guys are very entertaining. They're very skilled. And what I like about Frampton, it was a good lesson for a lot of the upcoming kids. You notice how he kept finding a way to impose his will. He got knocked down, he got up, he didn't change his game plan, he didn't retreat. He elevated his game, and he just kept prodding ahead until he finally began to demonstrate his mastery. And it was very clear from the beginning to the end, because as the fight went on, you could see how he just began to elevate, to another level. Every other round, he just kept showing a different dimension of his arsenal. And it was just good, man. It was just a good fight, This guy showed a lot of skill, and I applaud to his opponent also. You know, he's an up-and-coming kid, and he'll be back. See, once again, the loss is not the end of the career because he was entertaining, and he gave his best, and he learned. I'm sure he learned from the loss, and that's what's important.
Right.
So it was great. I want to see him again.
Yeah, you know, he probably never faced a guy with the arsenal that Frampton had in terms of hand speed and footwork. And, you know, I like the fighters. You know, some people get me wrong. You know, when I like these, you know, entertaining guys that come in and lay it on the line and throw punches and engage, you know, yeah, okay. And then you have the typical, you know, Floyd Mayweather Kool-Aid drinker who says, oh, no, that's just barroom brawling. I like Floyd Mayweather because he, you know, shows the sweet science and everything. But I disagree. I like the guys who show that sweet science in terms of, you know, avoiding the being hit, which is, you know, Floyd's whole idea. But the difference between a guy like Mayweather and his style and a guy like Frampton or even Rigondeaux is that these kinds of guys avoid the punch, but they're in position to throw another punch and connect. They're not on the other side of the ring, you know, and that's what I like. And as you could see on last week with this fight, it's way more entertaining when you have a fighter like that.
Oh yeah, and they're anxious. You know, they're anxious to engage, Billy. You know, these guys, and I think that's why he got knocked down, you know, so many times, because he was so anxious to get in there and engage instead of working his way in behind the jab and keeping his hands up. He was just so anxious to get in, and a very important element that I believe was in play was that he was so anxious to please the fans.
Yep.
You know, he was so anxious to please the fans. He was making his debut here in America, and he wanted to be impressive for the fans, and I think that the fans deserve that. And that's the quality of competition that we hope continues with this series.
Well, the other thing too is, like I said earlier, you know how it is. Most Mexican fighters can not only take a punch, but they're not afraid to take it and deliver an ass beating to their opponent. And I think that was a little shocking too. I agree with everything you said, but then when you just sprinkle in the fact that, you know, he's got a typical Mexican style Mexican fighter in front of him that you know, punches with the hands of stone, you know. I mean, I think both fighters learned something from this fight, and hey, that's all you can ask for, that they get better and better after each time out.
And that right there is the sweet science.
Right.
I think that's the sweet science, what we saw in that fight.
Yeah, I agree. The other fight on that card was kind of reminiscent of the nickname of Chris Arreola. It was a nightmare for Chris. I don't know what's happened to this guy. You know, he was never really a finesse fighter or anything, but I loved watching Chris Arreola, and I've seen this guy really just, you know, regress. Now, I don't know if he's just not into it, if he doesn't give the training anymore. I mean, he always looks overweight. He struggled in his last fight. You know, he fights this fight against Cassie. He struggles. He gets a draw. And, you know, I mean, we could say what we want about Arreola, about Cassie, but what bothers me the most is it's like he's going to get rewarded for his last two terrible performances against awful opponents.
Wilder, right?
And then he gets Wilder. I mean, I don't understand, you know, and I think that's more of a knock on Wilder for picking him. What do you think about that?
Well, is this shot number 3? Let me see now. How many shots he had at the title?
Arreola lost. He lost to Vladimir.
Yeah, Arreola.
Right. He lost to Vladimir. Remember, Vladimir beat the snot out of him.
Right.
He lost to Stavern. Stavern beat him, you know, twice. One was an eliminator, and then the other one was a title fight. So this would be at least his third shot.
Third. It seems like it almost seems like he gets rewarded for losing, right?
I mean, like I said, I'm not sure how I look at it. Is it more Chris Arreola getting awarded for being, marginal, or are they really searching for lack of talented fighters to fight Wilder, the guy who claims he's the best heavyweight in the world? So
I think they still kind of think that Chris Arreola is sort of a gatekeeper to the heavyweights, but he's seen his better days. I think we've seen the best of Chris. Here's a kid who already admits that he doesn't like to train. He always comes in, looks like he's overweight as a heavyweight.
Yep.
Doesn't look like he's in shape, but yet he seems like he's a stepping stone for the other guys coming up, while at the same time they reward him with championship fights when he loses.
Right.
So it's a strange paradox, you know what
I know.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
but he can be Billy. He can be entertaining. I think he's always going to do his best, but his best doesn't seem to be good enough anymore. I think that's the best way to put it.
That's the best way to put it. Exactly, because he used to be entertaining when he could land a shot or two. Now he seems like he can't even land punches, so now he's become a punching bag, and when he struggles against the Cassies of the division, and no disrespect to Cass, and remember, he was twice the size of this guy too, so, and now all of a sudden, and you're right about labeling him potentially as a gatekeeper now, and then that goes back to my thing about these fighters that get a title, and then we as fans are supposed to accept that they're still building them up. Well, he's still learning, we're still developing him. Wait, he's wearing a belt. That all the development should be behind him now. The same thing happened with Andre Berto. He's my poster child for that. Andre Berto got a fast track. Next thing you know, he's a world champion, same title. He's WBC world champion. And we were expected to see him develop. And then finally, when he meets a legitimate world-class fighter, he loses, and then he's never been the same. And now we talk about him as being, he was overrated, he was this and that. And you wonder whose fault it is. Is it really the fighter's fault? I don't know.
Well, I think, I don't know. The fighter, he has to have a little bit of the fault. But I also think it's part of the management. I also think the trainer. Who knows the fighter best? The trainer. And, again, here we are talking about, trainers. The old real teachers are just not around anymore. And that's lacking. And I think that it's being reflected now in what we're seeing in these fighters. Andre Berto is a prime example. Still a youngster, and he never really fully reached, in my opinion, his full potential. And he's almost, I want to use the word shot, for lack of a better term, but I mean, he's almost at the end of his career in terms of, skills and championships. He should still be a champion, because, he still has the youth, and if he had learned properly, in my opinion, and if he was brought along properly, guys like him could hold the belt for years, at his age. But this is what we see now when they rush a kid along, and so I think the blame should be shared, but I really do think that it's more on the management, because that's the manager's job. A schooled, skilled manager is supposed to be able to move the fighter, through the path, and make sure that he gets those type of learning fights as he moves up the ladder. And by the time he reaches that pinnacle where he's at the championship level, he should have all the knowledge and skills down pack, where if he wins a title, he can hold on to that title for several years. And we don't see that anymore. We saw it in the years past with, and my poster children, that 76 Olympic class that came out of, Montreal with Sugar Ray Leonard and all of those guys. You see how long those guys stayed at the top of their game because they learned. They had those skills down, man. And they were very entertaining for years. And that's what made that era such an exciting era for boxing. And maybe now with the new with the PBC model, maybe that'll be the next phase of development of that model. We'll begin to see, some of these fighters develop their skills to a greater level, and they'll be able to hold on to these championships longer. I'm hopeful of that.
I hope so. I just think the mentality of today's fighter is different than the fighters of the Fab Four that you're mentioning, because fighters of yesteryear seem to want to prove that they were the best, and the way to do it is to go above and beyond what people expect you to do. Sugar Ray Leonard is a great, more recent example. He retires and comes back, and who does he go after? He goes after the top dog, the baddest ass in the division, and that doesn't happen today. Our so-called top dog picks the easiest puppy to beat up, to me it's a different mentality. And it's not just one fighter. It's the thought process. Hey, you touched on something, and I had a conversation with a guy today, and we were talking. This is totally off subject, but we were talking about trainers, just like you said. You mentioned, basically what we've said in the past, that there's a lot of rah-rah men and there's no teachers and stuff like that. And I was in this extensive conversation with this. He's a young trainer, actually, and I said, and he was saying the same stuff. He's going, the trainers are just gone. He was taught by, a guy that's in his 90s now, and a boxing guy, and the same stuff we were always talking about. And as I'm talking to him, I'm thinking to myself, a lot has to do. Now, this is right up your alley. A lot has to do with the commissions, because as well as anyone, Larry, that if I come and pay the cornerman license in the state of New York or New Jersey or California, poof, I'm a corner man. I paid a license and I'm in there. And the sad thing is I've never trained anybody. I've never claimed to be a trainer, and I wouldn't claim to know what the hell I'm doing. I can talk and say, oh yeah, you should do this, you should do that, but I'm no trainer. Do you think it's time for the sport of boxing to start to incorporate some rules where, hey, you want to be a trainer, not just a second, not just the guy that's going to hold the ice bucket or the water bottle or something like that, but the guy who's going in there as a chief second, who's supposed to be the main trainer? Do you think that the commissions should finally step up and say, hey, listen, in order to be a trainer in my state, you got to undergo a course or show some type of a certificate? Do you think we need that in the sport?
Well, Billy, that's very progressive, and I have to say yes, especially being a former educator, because that entails education. That means that they have to learn if they don't know, and you can't ever go wrong with that. And I think that, that's a great idea. The difficulty that we have in our sport on progressive ideas is getting everybody on board. And, I've kind of changed my attitude about a lot of things in boxing, because I think that there is a great need for the sport to demonstrate greater levels of unity and cooperation. And I'm glad you brought that up, because it's a segue to what I really want to say here. There's so much negativity going on in our sport now. It's just driving us apart. And we see it in these little things that you so often bring up. And unless we're willing, all of us, to get on the same page and try new ideas, and that's a great idea. And you know how that could best be attained? Through the Association of Boxing Commissions. And I think that that's a group that, I've been very critical of them in the past, but I think that, it's time for all of us to let's work together and, press our ideas on that group, because that's the group that is made up of all of the commissions. So if we could foster these new, that's a fantastic idea you have there. And if we could foster those types of ideas through the ABC, I think a whole lot of progress could be made, especially in that area. Because, if we all, who is going to not agree with the fact that there's a need for greater levels of teaching for these fighters? I think there's a greater level of understanding about what it takes to be a trainer and how you should go about training fighters. And that opens up a whole brand new spectrum of education for people in boxing. And I think that it can really be attained through a group like the Association of Boxing Commission. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take that idea to them, to work with them, because that's the only way we're going to make progress. And I think maybe you should also, try to have some input into that, because that's a fantastic idea.
Well, yeah,
and I'm all for that.
But here's the problem, and I've brought up ideas and we've talked about it, and I agree with your initial thought of the ABC. It's an organization that wants to pat themselves on the back, but they also have no spine to pat. They don't have the juice. But here's the way it could work. Think of it this way: if you're in amateur boxing, you got to be part of USA Boxing, right? So the coaches have to take some kind of course and everything else. They have to do that in USA.
That's right. They have to do it.
So why not on a pro level? So here's the thing. Let's look at, for argument's sake, your state, New Jersey. You incorporate a rule like that, and you say, okay, from now on, all of the chief seconds that are going to have fighters on my cards in my state have to go through a course. And you understand that you can't flip the switch because you don't want to chase fighters away and cards away and blah, blah, blah. So you could even offer a temporary course, like at a weigh-in. Okay, all the chief seconds, you don't have a certificate. Well, you're going to have to sit through this 2-hour course we're going to have just so you can do it for this fight. But if you want to get certified, you're going to have to take a course, and whatever the course is. And the states can have their own. They can do it whether it's a 2-hour course or a 2-week course, And then as long as the trainers have those certificates and they renew it and they take a class, just like you make your referees do. It's it's all relative. It's relative. And here's the thing. If we can start to police the guys that are in the corner, eventually it's going to weed out, and maybe we will get the right teachers. And then guess what happens? Now you start getting the fighters that are better, and in the long run, it's the best for the sport. The worst thing I watch.
You know what? I'm going to run with that. That's a great idea. But you know what? There's even another way. We could give seminars for trainers,
right,
and certificate them, because that's the way we do the officials.
Well, when I watch a fight, and now with today's technology, we got microphones in the corner. You hear what they're saying,
yes.
and it sometimes I shake my head, and I'm saying, what is this guy saying to him? Hey, when I hear and we kid about it, but I've heard it many times. Hey, listen, you got to avoid that right hand that's coming at you, and by the way, throw this punch or throw, and the fighter's looking at him with that look on his face that your kid looked at you one day when you told him to do something like, what are you talking about? And it's like, wait a minute. I want to hear a trainer give constructive criticism, tell them how. And I'm not talking about a trainer who's boxing in the corner. Those guys are, you need something in between. You go back and you watch these great teachers. I don't know if I ever saw them in the corner going, you got to throw with your left, and they're shadow boxing in the corner. That's a whole nother thing. We have a huge void, Larry, that has to be filled, and at least in my opinion.
You know what I'm going to do, Billy? And I'm gonna let them know where I got this idea too. I'm gonna contact New York. I'm gonna start with New York because, we're right here in New Jersey, New York. We can start the ball rolling. I'm going to get in touch with Berlin and the new chairman, Tom Hoover. I don't know if you know Tom, but he's a great guy, and he knows boxing. I'm going to get in touch with them, and I'm going to tell them about this discussion. And, I'm going to see if I can set up some courses on a shared basis with New York and New Jersey. All the licensed corner people, New York and New Jersey, and we can make it a requirement that they come to a series of seminars or classes. We're going to call them classes,
right,
because it gives them more of an educational flavor. You follow me?
Yeah.
And we're going to give them certificates, and we will hopefully select some of those learned guys that we know that are out there, maybe guys like Mark Brilliant and some of the older guys that have been around. There's still a few, and get them to run the courses for us, and we'll give certificates to the licensed corner people in our states.
Exactly.
And then hopefully we could join together and push this idea into the Association of Boxing Commissions and get this thing, to start around the country. You know what I mean? That's a fantastic idea, Billy.
And the thing is it's not like you're busting saying, listen, the chief guy, the main trainer, has to hold a certificate. The other guys that are holding towels and bringing bottles of water, not so much.
They learn from him.
Yeah,
they learn from him.
Right. So I would love, and Dave Berlin is a guy that I think would be receptive to that, because he's a guy that thinks about safety, and this is a safety issue. You want the guys that are telling the fighters what to do to actually know what they're talking about. And I think it will help the sport in the long run. Real quickly,
well, I think it's fantastic. The ABC is having their convention next week. I'll have representatives there, but I won't be able to go. But I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to wait until after the convention when everyone's back, and I'm going to have a meeting in New York with the executive director, Dave Berlin, and the chairman, Tom Hoover, who's a very good friend of mine, and I'm going to put this on the table. And I'm going to let them know that this is the result of our conversation, and this is, where it came from.
That's good.
Because I believe it. Yes, I am.
Very quickly, Julio Cesar Chavez got back in the ring and kind of disappointed this past weekend. I used to love this kid, Larry, but I don't know. I don't think his heart's in it. What do you think, real quick?
Well, as we talked about it last week, Billy, and I felt that, I've always had a measure of confidence in him. I'm not going to give up on him yet, okay? He came in, of course, overweight again. He talked about having a great camp, but yet he was overweight. So there's something missing there. And, I'm going to give him a few more fights before I give up. But I was very disappointed in the fight. His performance was really, very mediocre in my opinion. And we're just going to have to, the jury's still out on my end. I'm going to give him a few more fights before I throw in the towel, But here's a kid who I thought had great potential. Got a granite chin, but he's got a way to go to live up to the Chavez name. So maybe boxing is just not in his, maybe it's just not for him, because he's nothing like his father. So
no, and that's got to be killing Papa, huh? He sits there.
Well, sometimes we have to understand that our children just have the other ideas. It could be that he's only fighting because of his father. That happens a lot too.
Well, Larry Hazzard Jr. was one of the judges this past week, and I know he got it right, and he would be scared to call you if he didn't get it right?
Well, I stay on him all the time, He was born into the sport. All of my children were born into it.
They had scorecards. Most kids get rattled. Most kids get rattles when they're baby. You gave out scorecards, right?
Well, he always wanted to do it, and I really tried to get him to go into refereeing, but he didn't like that. Plus, he's gotten too big. He's out of shape. But he's a very good judge. He used to sit down at home and. I showed him what are you doing? I said, well, I'm scoring the fight. And he started out as a youngster. And I started watching him, and he does pretty good. And he's been around a while, too. I never gave him a license in New Jersey because, I didn't want any conflicts and nepotism and all of that stuff. So he works in New York, and he's been around. He's been on a lot of other countries. So he was in Texas last week. So he did a good job. So he's keeping the name above water, as I say.
Well, he had it right. He had the fight right.
Yeah,
that's all you can ask, right? I mean, I don't want to go. Which one is Larry Hazzard Jr.? The one with the glasses? Oh, okay, But anyway. Well, that's good stuff. But Larry, let me know how you make out, and I would love to hear that become a thing that gets done, because I think in the long run, and that the trainers are going to be hemming and hawing, but in the long run it'll be good.
I'm really hoping, and I think that Tom and Dave Berlin, hopefully, I mean it's a great idea, Billy. I mean, we have to be progressive minded, and we have to work together.
Well, these are the types of things that would get boxing back in mainstream sports. If you take a couple of little steps towards it. We don't have a league to regulate us or anything like that. So, if the commission step up and do it and act, like you said, in a unified manner, and do things like that, and like the other ideas we've discussed in the past, like I think that when a fighter turns pro, they should get a head scan, and they should have that on record. So if there's ever a major knockout, the doctors can compare it to something. Little steps like that, I think, would go a long way. And the biggest argument's going to be cost. Who pays for this? Well, you know what?
Well, Billy, that's already a part of our uniform medical standards. In order to get licensed in New Jersey, period.
Right. Well, the same thing in New York.
New York has it.
Right.
And this is what, again, all of these things have to be funneled nationally. And so, we have to start somewhere. But I'm definitely, man, I'm hot for this idea with these trainers.
Well, good.
Because that's something that we see a definite need for. And we've talked about it many times, and so somebody's got to grab the ball and run with it.
No doubt.
And that's what we're in these roles of leadership. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And so, I'm gonna step out with that one.
Well, keep me posted.
I owe you one. I owe you one on that one. Yes.
I would love to. I would love to hear that role. So, Larry, enjoy the fights this weekend. We got a couple of good ones, and we'll be talking next week, my man.
Okay, Billy. Okay, always a pleasure.
All right, brother. Take care.
Okay, you too.
That's my man, Larry Hazzard. He's Boxing Hall of Famer, and, of course, the New Jersey State Athletic Commissioner. So the guy knows his stuff. Hey, listen, I got to take a break. When I come back, Dax Khan will give us his 3 favorite fights, break them down, and give us his predictions in about 2 minutes. You'll get that.
Talkin.